Okay, so, you know how we're always talking about AI and like where it's going? Well, buckle up because today we are diving headfirst into AI in medicine and specifically all those ethical questions that come up.
It's a big one.
It really is. And you know what's great? You've given us a really cool mix of stuff to dig into. We've got that academic article on AI in medicine, which is super interesting. But then we've also got some background on Star Trek's EMH, like who doesn't love Star Trek, right? And then to top it off, there's that Harvard Gazette article, which really dives into the potential problems.
Some really insightful points in that one for sure.
Totally. Okay, so let's just be real for a sec. The potential of AI in healthcare. It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, faster diagnoses, like way faster, more accurate to personalized treatments, catching diseases super early, maybe even preventing them altogether.
It's incredible.
It really is. And we're already seeing little bits of this happening right now in the real world, like IBM's Watson helping doctors with cancer diagnoses. And don't even get me started on the progress AI is making in cardiology.
It's huge.
Huge. It feels like we're right on the edge of a total revolution.
I agree. I mean, the possibilities really are incredible, but we have to remember it's like any powerful tool, right? It's not just about what AI can do, but how we make sure it's used responsibly and ethically. And that's where things get really interesting, don't you think? Especially when we're talking about AI taking on more decision-making in healthcare.
Totally. And that's what that Harvard Gazette article called out, right? That whole great promise but potential for peril angle. Exactly.
Which brings me to Star Trek.
Oh, I love it.
Because I always knew they were ahead of their time. So tell me, what's the deal with this emergency medical hologram? He seems awfully relevant to our conversation.
Right. Okay, so the EMH, or the Doctor, as he prefers, from Star Trek, Voyager, he's a great example, even though he's fictional, of a strong AI in medicine. Basically, he's this super advanced holographic doctor, and he's equipped to handle any medical situation you can imagine. And what makes him really relevant to what we're talking about is how much he's like the idea of a strong AI. Like he's designed to be as close to a human doctor as possible. He's got consciousness, even emotions.
So hold on, he's not just spitting out a diagnosis from some database. He's actually thinking and feeling like a human doctor.
Yes.
That's wild. It is. It really blurs the line between fiction and reality. And get this initially. The EMH was only supposed to be functional for 1,500 hours, but then he starts developing sentience and expanding his own capabilities. He goes way beyond his original programming.
Wait, back up for a second. You keep saying strong AI. What's the opposite of that? What's the alternative?
Good question. Okay, so the article talks about weak AI as the opposite, and that kind of AI is focused on very specific tasks.
Okay.
So, for example, a weak AI might be amazing at looking at medical images and detecting early signs of cancer. That's a really specific task with defined parameters, right? But a strong AI that's aiming for something much bigger, it's trying to have that human-like understanding of medicine. It could interact with patients, diagnose illnesses, even recommend treatment plans.
Gotcha. Okay, so the EMH is like the ultimate goal then. He's the gold standard for strong AI in medicine.
In many ways, yeah. But even in Star Trek, and remember it's fiction, things get complicated.
Of course.
The doctor, he struggles with ethical dilemmas, like any human doctor would. He has to make impossible choices, like choosing who to save when he can only save one person.
Right.
He even develops really strong bonds with the crew. I mean, he experiences something that's essentially a psychotic break because of how intense his responsibilities are and the emotional weight of it all.
Okay, now that you mention it, I do remember those episodes. Man, those were some intense episodes. But isn't that kind of the point here? Even this super advanced fictional AI like the EMH is still running into very human ethical dilemmas. Makes you think, huh? Like, how would we deal with those situations if they popped up with real AI in medicine?
Exactly. And that takes us right to the heart of what we're talking about today, those very real ethical concerns that experts are trying to wrap their heads around as AI gets more powerful in healthcare. The Harvard Gazette article really hits on some big ones.
Like what?
Like bias and discrimination, for starters.
Whoa, okay. How does that play into AI in medicine?
Well, think about it this way. AI algorithms are only as good as the data they're trained on, right?
Right.
So let's just say, hypothetically, that a certain group of people has historically had way less access to good healthcare.
Okay.
If that bias is in the data that's used to train an AI, it's going to be reflected in how that AI makes decisions. And that could lead to unfair or discriminatory outcomes.
Man, that's a scary thought. So it's like those historical biases could actually get amplified if we aren't incredibly careful about the data that's used to train these systems.
Exactly.
What about privacy? That's a big one for me. We're talking about some seriously private stuff here, medical histories, genetic data, the list goes on and on. Doesn't AI need mountains of that data to even work?
Right.
It feels like a no-win situation. Like you need the data to make the AI work, but then you've got all these privacy risks.
It's a tough one, for sure. And it's something that both the scholarly article and that Harvard Gazette article spent a lot of time on. And you know what? It seems like everyone's kind of agreeing that we need a multi-pronged approach here. We need to be thinking about regulation, education, and coming up with some really solid ethical frameworks.
Okay, yeah, let's break those down one by one.
Yeah.
Regulation seems like the obvious place to start.
It does, right?
Like every time I open up a tech website or something, someone's saying we need more government oversight of AI.
And it makes sense. I mean, the potential impact of AI, especially in healthcare, which is so essential.
Yeah.
It's huge, right? So we can't just ignore it.
Right.
That Harvard Gazette article, it actually points out that the U.S. right now has very little in the way of government regulation when it comes to AI.
Interesting.
So a lot of these companies, they're basically left to their own devices.
Oh, no. So it's like the Wild West out there for AI.
A little bit, yeah.
It makes me a little nervous considering what we're talking about here. Like the stakes are pretty high.
They are. And that's why people like Michael Sandel, they're so important in this whole conversation.
What does he say?
Well, he says flat out that self-regulation just isn't going to cut it.
Wow, okay.
He's calling for a major educational intervention so that policymakers actually know what they're dealing with when it comes to AI and all the ethical stuff that goes along with it.
Complicated.
Yeah, exactly. And others like Jason Furman, he thinks that we should give more power to the regulatory bodies that already exist so they can handle AI in their specific areas.
Instead of creating some whole new thing that we have to figure out.
Exactly. Like, why reinvent the wheel, right?
Right.
So, for instance, the FDA, they could be way more involved in overseeing AI when it comes to new drugs or medical devices.
That's a really good point. It seems way more efficient to use the expertise that's already there. What about other countries? Is the U.S. behind when it comes to this AI regulation stuff?
It seems like it. The article mentions that the European Union is ahead of us. They've already got stricter data privacy laws in place, and the European Commission is working on an ethical framework for using AI right now.
Okay, so they're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, so there's probably a lot we could learn from how they're tackling these things.
Yeah, it's a global issue, right? Seems like there's a real opportunity for collaboration here, especially with something like AI in medicine, which affects everyone, everywhere.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about regulation. What about education? You mentioned that too.
Yeah, and the articles, they're in complete agreement here. We really need to educate people about the ethical implications of AI. And I'm talking about everyone here, like the general public policymakers, and especially the people who are going to be creating AI in the future.
Okay, so it's not just about making sure AI doesn't turn into the Terminator and like take over the world.
Well, that too, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that we're using AI to build the kind of future we actually want.
I like the way you put that.
We need to be teaching people how to think critically, how to spot potential biases, and how to take responsibility for the AI systems that we create. It's about giving people the tools to be informed and to be active participants in a world that's only going to get more driven by AI.
Okay, I'm with you. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay,
last but not least, you talked about ethical frameworks. What are those exactly?
so basically, ethical frameworks are like a set of guiding principles for developing and using AI in a way that's responsible. They're supposed to make sure that we're putting human values first when we're building AI, that it's about benefiting society and not just about making a profit or pushing technology forward just because we can.
So it's like building in safeguards from the very beginning?
Yes. It's like a Hippocratic oath, but for people who make AI.
A Hippocratic oath for algorithms. I like that. But are there any real-world examples of these frameworks? Is anyone actually working on this stuff?
Yeah, for sure. There are quite a few organizations like the European Commission that we talked about and the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. They're all working on creating ethical guidelines for AI as we speak.
Wow, that's encouraging.
It's a really complicated process, and it's constantly evolving, but it's a super important step to make sure that we're developing and using AI, especially in medicine, carefully and with a lot of thought.
Okay, so this all sounds good in theory, but I gotta ask, with AI moving so crazy fast, can we actually keep up with it? It's like we're building the plane while we're flying it, right?
That's a great way to put it. It's definitely a lot to think about, but I don't think it's impossible.
Okay, good.
The key here, and this is where I'm feeling hopeful, is remembering that this isn't just about technology, it's about society too. We need to be talking openly and honestly about what AI means for all of us. And everyone needs to be part of the conversation. Scientists, engineers, policymakers, ethicists, everyday people, we've all got a stake in this.
Okay, so we need a global deep dive on AI then.
Exactly.
Sign me up. But really, though, what can everyday people like our listeners actually do? This all feels so big and complicated.
Oh, it is big and it is
Right.
complicated, but that's exactly why it's so important for everyone to speak up. Just start asking questions. What kind of future do we want with AI? What matters most to us when it comes to healthcare? How do we balance making progress with protecting what makes us human? I mean, these are tough questions, but they're questions that we all need to be asking, not just the experts in a lab somewhere.
You know, it's funny, thinking back to the EMH, even in that fictional world, they were wrestling with these exact same questions. Like, I'm remembering that episode where doctor has to choose between saving one patient or another, and it almost destroys him.
Oh, yeah.
But what's interesting is that the crew doesn't just write it off as like, oh, he's just a hologram, that's a glitch in his program. They actually help him work through it. They recognize that even an AI can struggle with moral questions.
It's an important point, and one that I think gets missed a lot in these conversations. We always want to put AI into these neat little boxes, right? Like it's either going to be this amazing utopia or it's going to be a terrifying dystopia. But the reality is it's probably going to be somewhere in between messy and complicated.
Yeah.
And the EMH is a good reminder that even the most advanced AI isn't separate from us. It's going to be shaped by us, by our values, by how we interact with it.
Which reminds me of something I thought was really interesting in that academic article. We read the whole thing about inverse reinforcement learning. The idea that maybe we could teach AI about human values just by letting it watch us. Is that really possible?
It's a cool idea,
Yeah.
but it's not that simple. I mean, whose values are we talking about? And how do we account for all those biases we all have that are shaping our actions, whether we realize it or not? It's a good reminder that even when we're trying to do the right thing, we have to be super careful about how we're shaping AI, especially in something as important as healthcare.
So much to think about. It's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It really is.
And speaking of mind-blowing, AI isn't just shaking things up in medicine. It's also set to transform the entire economy and how we work.
It is. Which begs the question, how will these changes impact careers, skills, and the future?
We've got some different takes on that in these articles you sent. On one hand, AI is creating entirely new jobs. That executive order on AI talks about the need for a national surge in AI talent, meaning we'll need tons of people who get these technologies. But on the other hand, AI is automating tasks humans do now, so some jobs will inevitably be impacted.
Right, and it's not just about manual labor or repetitive tasks either. AI can analyze huge amounts of data and make decisions, often faster and more efficiently than humans in a lot of fields. Think about it. AI-powered software is already used for things like financial analysis, legal research, even journalism.
There's this quote from Joseph Fuller, a professor at Harvard Business School, who's been studying how AI is impacting jobs. He says, virtually every big company now has multiple AI systems and sees using AI as key to their strategy. So it's not some far-off thing. It's happening now.
And that's what makes understanding both the opportunities and potential issues AI presents so important. On the plus side, AI has the potential to boost productivity, cut costs, and really drive economic growth. One of the articles you sent said global business spending on AI is predicted to reach a massive $110 billion every year by 2024. That's a huge investment. It shows a major shift in how businesses are working.
So we're talking about a huge shift in the workforce. It's no wonder there's so much excitement, but also some worry around AI.
Definitely.
But what about the ethics of it all? Can we even talk about AI without addressing those big questions?
I don't think so. And one of the biggest issues is bias in these systems.
Right, because if we aren't careful, AI could just reinforce, even magnify, the inequalities we already have.
Exactly. Think about it. AI algorithms are trained on these massive data sets. And if that data reflects existing biases or prejudices, the AI just keeps repeating those patterns.
It's like that old saying, garbage in, garbage out, feed AI bad data, you get bad results.
Exactly. And this isn't just theoretical. Take AI-powered software used in hiring. If the algorithm learns from data that shows a preference for certain types of people in a certain industry, it might unintentionally screen out qualified candidates.
That's a scary thought. It's like we're baking bias into systems that are supposed to be objective and data-driven.
That's exactly why it's so important to have diverse teams designing these systems. And we need rigorous testing to catch and fix bias.
It sounds like a huge challenge. No easy answers. Let's shift gears for a second and talk about AI and jobs. Some say AI will create more jobs than it replaces. Others are worried about widespread job losses. Any consensus?
It's a huge debate. No easy answer there either. It's likely AI will both create new jobs and displace existing ones.
So a bit of both, huh?
Yeah. Some experts believe AI will automate routine, repetitive tasks. That frees humans up for roles that require creativity, strategy, interacting with other people. This could even lead to jobs we can't even imagine yet.
So it's not so much humans versus machines, but humans working alongside machines in new ways.
Exactly. The main thing to remember is that the future of work in the age of AI means being adaptable, always learning, embracing new skills and ways of thinking.
It seems like lifelong learning is more crucial now than ever with how fast things are changing.
Couldn't agree more. The skills in high demand today might be obsolete tomorrow. Being a lifelong learner, updating your skills constantly, that's how you stay ahead.
Okay, so we've talked about AI's potential impact on jobs. What about how it shapes the future of society in general? Any big picture stuff we should be thinking about?
That's where things get really interesting. See, AI isn't just technology. It's a powerful force that's going to completely reshape our world.
It feels like we're at the very beginning of something huge. A little scary, too.
Definitely. And with all this transformation comes a responsibility to really consider the ethical side of things, to make sure AI is used for good.
One of the articles you sent that really made me think was by Michael Sandel. He talks about the ethics of AI, and he asks this really tough question. Can these machines actually outthink us, or are there some things about human judgment that are essential when we're deciding the most important things in life?
That gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? As AI gets more and more advanced, we're giving it the power to make decisions that have real consequences in our lives.
It's not even just if AI can be as smart. It's whether it should even try to be when you're talking about morality, empathy, those human things.
Right. And that's something that importance and limitations of AI ethics in contemporary society.pdf really digs into. It brings up some seriously thorny ethical questions that we're already facing, like take self-driving cars. Not that long ago, that seemed like sci-fi. But what happens when the AI in the car has to make a choice in a split second? Like if an accident's about to happen, does it protect the people inside the car, even if it risks someone else's safety?
Whoa. That's a tough one, like the philosophy problem in real life.
Yeah.
Except now we're programming that dilemma into technology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why talking about AI ethics is so urgent. It's not enough to just make these powerful technologies. We have to make sure they reflect our values as a society.
And everyone needs to be part of that conversation, not just the tech people, right? It affects all of us.
Absolutely. We need ethicists, policymakers, industry leaders, but especially we need the public to be a part of this. The future of AI shouldn't just be decided by the people writing the code.
It's about making conscious choices about how AI fits into our lives, right? Okay, so as we're coming up from this deep dive, what's the one thing you really want our listener to walk away with today?
That the future of AI in medicine and everything, really, it's not set in stone. It's being decided right now by all of us. So stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged. Your voice, your questions, your choices, they all matter. They're all shaping what we're building with AI.
Well said. We've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From how amazing AI could be in healthcare to all those real ethical questions that even fictional holograms are dealing with. And remember, this is a conversation that's not going away anytime soon.
Right.
And the more we know, the better prepared we'll be to deal with whatever comes next. Thanks for joining us.